The journey, which began amid the splendours of royal palaces, ended in the country lanes surrounding the family estate. The crowds were quiet and controlled, but they would take away a personal memory of a moment in history. Outside the iron gates of Althorpe Park, they waited for a last glimpse of the coffin of the princess, the last stage in its public journey. Here it would pass to her family, so they could mourn in private. The Spencers were bringing her home to be buried where the family is embedded in English history. The coffin passed from public view, and they let it go.
It is now almost a year since Diana, Princess of Wales, was buried here in the park at Althorpe. Until now, her brother, Earl Spencer, has only allowed her family and closest friends to visit her island grave.
Diana's element was water. I love the idea of her being buried, surrounded by that element. It's the most beautiful place. It's very peaceful. It's surrounded by trees planted by members of her family and by herself. Everyone who goes there just sort of nods and says, yeah, it's perfect. And I think it's a fitting place for somebody who appreciated the beautiful things in life.
Tell me about the memorial you're creating here. Why did you feel you had to do it?
After Diana's death, it became clear that this was becoming a point of pilgrimage for people who cared about her. Masses of flowers at the gates, people just gravitating towards here. So we decided, first of all, we had to limit the numbers, otherwise the whole area would be swamped. And then secondly, I took the decision that we should do something here to honour her. I mean, if we, her family, can't put together something tasteful and meaningful for people, then I don't know who can.
The memorial will only be open for 60 days a year from the 1st of July, Diana's birthday. However, most of the tickets for this season sold out weeks ago. Over 140,000 people have paid £9.50 to visit this site. Earl Spencer has converted these old stables into 6 exhibition rooms, each celebrating a different aspect of Diana's life, using films, paintings and personal mementos. The buildings are Grade 1 listed, so all the works have had to be carried out with great care, even down to using horsehair plaster.
What is that, rot or worm?
Deathwatch beetle. So if you've got a wooden leg, be careful.
The cost about £2.5 million. It's between 2 and £2.5 million once you've put in all the extra, the VAT, the fees and everything else, which obviously is a very, very considerable sum. But one needs to do that to cater for the number of people. You need to spend that type of money.
After Diana's death, all of her belongings were removed from Kensington Palace and brought here to Althorpe. From school reports to her famous wedding dress, nothing was left behind. And it's from these things, the remnants of her life, that the exhibition has been created.
Selecting the objects, I tried to turn to an advantage the fact that I didn't know the princess and I'd never met her. And so my response to objects, I tried to put in the position of the way a visitor to the exhibition would feel about them. And if I felt a kind of emotion or a sort of feeling of sadness or poignancy about an object, and I always try to kind of keep that as a sort of first thought and think, yes, this should go in. One of the, I think, exhibits that visitors will really want to see is her wedding dress. And the display of that will dominate the third room. And, of course, that's the transition from her being a girl within the Spencer family to moving into her position married to Prince Charles.
Hi. So this is the final selection?
It is. It is. Well, what I've laid out here are the objects that will go into the childhood room.
This is just poignant, really. It's not upsetting in any way. It's just the little girl's collection of things, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is, and we very much like this little letter which we thought we'd put in.
Dear Mummy and Daddy, I hope you had a nice journey and that you're enjoying your holiday. We had a power cut on Monday and I went to bed with a candle in my room. That's sweet, isn't it?
It is.
Lots of love, Diana. That's lovely.
Great. Oh, that book, yeah, I found that thing. It's the first time she met her husband-to-be. Diana's up that end. Prince Charles there as a guest to my sister Sarah.
And it's even got the reason for the occasion.
He's the visit of the Queen of Denmark.
And such a period menu.
Yes.
Crispy chicken and cheese sauce.
Oh,
chocolate
dear.
mousse.
Yes. It's in the guest list. Was it Lord Carrington? Norman St. John Stevens. Strange bunch, really. And you got that daffodil photograph down there?
Yes, I was just wondering about showing that because in a way, the photograph albums, I wonder if they say the story of photographs from her childhood and whether that would be maybe too much.
Yeah.
What was your childhood, yours and Diana's, like?
There were 5 children in my family, but the middle one, a boy called John, died. So it was very much 2 halves of the family, my 2 eldest sisters, then a slight gap, and then Diana and me. And growing up, Sarah and Jane, my other sisters, were very much a sort of in the background. They were at boarding school. And so it was Diana and me, Charles and Diana, later became a different Charles and Diana, and we had a very happy time, lots of pets. I had my memory refreshed of our childhood quite recently because I found all my father's cine film footage of our childhood. He was a great amateur photographer. So that was very moving. It took me back to those years. Every divorce, as I'm well aware, has an effect on children. I think it certainly did have an effect on us, but day-to-day existence was happy. We had lots of friends. We had very privileged background, really. Lovely, huge grounds, gardens. We used Sandringham Park as a sort of extended garden. We rode our horses, we had our dogs and cats and everything, and it was a happy time.
What was your relationship with Diana like? Was she a kind of surrogate mother in a way?
Diana was very maternal at a very young age, and I think she quite enjoyed having a baby brother and treating me like a sort of living doll almost. And no, she was very affectionate towards me, and I know that I got a letter from my schoolmistress when we were both very young children, went to a school in King's Lynn in Norfolk, and she wrote and said she remembers my first day at school so much because Diana was totally distracted the whole day and kept saying, "How's Charles doing? Is he all right?" And in the end, she said, "For goodness sake, Diana, go and check for yourself." And then she left the class and came to see me in my classroom, and then apparently she went back to the headmistress and said, "He's fine," with a big grin on her face. So she was very caring and very loving, and she had that natural affinity with children which she had all her life, and I suppose I was just lucky I was her younger brother.
You called her Brian, I understand, from the dim-witted snail in the Magic Roundabout.
Yes, well, we did have some names for each other. That was only pulled out in extreme cases of anger. But no, it was just the knockabout element of family life was the same as with anyone else.
Why did you call her Dutch?
Dutch was short for Duchess. We called her that throughout her life. There seems to be a sort of perception that it's because she was very grand as a little girl. But I remember it being because she particularly identified with the lead cat in the Aristocats, and who was called Duchess. But anyway, it just snowballed from there, and it was her nickname in the family and among her close friends all her life.
And what sort of girl was she? Is it possible to sum her up?
She was very... she had star quality as a child. She was always striking poses with dancing steps and everything around the place, and she was very energetic.
To show off?
Well, not the show off is a cruel way of saying it. I think she was a junior star, really. Yeah, she had real appeal.
It's a very strong symbol putting somebody on an island. You know, it's an unmarked grave, and we really wanted to just to keep everything feeling as calm and contemplative as possible, not to pump the atmosphere up in any way. It's got to feel as if the estate, in a way, hasn't been changed that much, I think. Because it's a big, robust place. It's been looked after very well for a long, long time now, and there's a heritage here which goes right back. So, you know, it would be entirely wrong to make a mark on it at this point that doesn't take that on board. We got 500 white water lilies from Stowe.
Oh, lovely.
And they're going...
and when do they flower? What months?
They'll be in flower in July and August.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And
Well,
the
white
island-
flowers were her thing, actually, so that couldn't be better.
And on the island itself, we planted 100 white rambling roses of various different varieties, and they'd just go up into the trees and be very much part of what's already there. So
that's great.
And they'll have one sort of flash, and then...
Is that July and August again, is it?
That's July, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you about the swans? What happened there?
No.
It's the most extraordinary thing. I had a dream. It was in the week between Diana's death and the funeral. And I had a dream that there should be 4 black swans on this lake. So I got up early the next morning. I went to see Edward, the agent in the estate office. And I said, Edward, can you track down 4 black swans? And he said, oh, you've heard, have you? And I said, heard what? He said, we had a call on the machine last night from some man who's got 4 swans, black swans. He wants to donate them to the lake here. It's the most bizarre thing. Just complete coincidence, really.
It was here on the estate, when she was 16, that Diana first met Prince Charles. The two families have long been closely related. Diana's father was equerry to both George VI and, after his death, to his daughter Elizabeth II. In fact, the Queen is godmother to the present Earl Spencer. Prince Charles often stayed here at the house, first as a guest of Diana's sister, Lady Sarah, and later with Diana. The union between the Spencers and the Windsors was the perfect royal match, but it produced an unhappy marriage which ended in bitter divorce.
There must surely have been apprehensions about the sort of life she was getting into. I mean, without knowing what was to come, still it was a life of duty and formality and so on that she was going to find very difficult, surely.
I think at the time nobody had any idea what was going to happen. I mean, she's blazed a unique trail, even in royal terms. Nobody back in 1980-81 could have possibly foreseen what an impact Diana would have globally. So no, I don't. I think we were all very happy for her, having found somebody she was clearly in love with and was going to marry.
Do you think it's true in a sense that her temperament wasn't suited to the kind of disciplines, I suppose, of the job ahead? I mean, she'd had a sort of free-spirited childhood with perhaps not a lot of consistent discipline. Who would find that kind of environment difficult to move into?
I don't know. I think from the word go, she did a really good job, and the public warmed to that. I mean, she could have just sat in a palace eating chocolates and watching soap operas, but she actually got out there and got stuck in with a lot of meaningful issues. She didn't do the obvious things, maybe, but that was her style and that was her appeal. Nobody's going to look sort of glamorous doing AIDS, leprosy, homelessness, landmines. These are not glamorous causes. These are not things that you can just have a little coffee morning over and raise a few £100s and move on. I mean, she got stuck in, and I think that was the key to her appeal worldwide, is that people realised what she could have done and what she actually did and contributed.
Did she change in any way as she became more and more famous, more and more the international star?
Well, I think if you compare her to a lot of other famous people, she remained remarkably true to herself throughout her life. If you think of the absolutely extraordinary effect she had on people when she met them or when they saw her, whether it was in the media or live, the amount she changed was so insignificant compared to the amount of attention and adoration she received. I think that was a real tribute to her, that she didn't become like some sort of dippy Hollywood star. She actually kept a firm focus on what she wanted to do, primarily being a good mother, and she stuck to it.
Was she glad to sort of throw it all off when she could? I mean, did she like to be herself as much as possible?
Oh yeah, she had an incredible sense of humour. She knew all the latest jokes, etc. No, she was great fun to be with. She was a really entertaining person. I'm not saying she didn't have her down moments too, but if you think of the pressures on her from all sorts of directions, it's not surprising. But overall, I mean, just in her downtime, as it were, yeah, she was great fun. Always laughing. I mean, the laugh was, that's something I'll never forget. It was so deep. It came from right down inside her. It's very special.
When did you begin to realise that it was going to have an impact on you, that in fact you were going to become interesting to people for who your sister was rather than yourself, which must be a hard thing?
Well, it didn't take too long. I mean, I was editor of the school magazine, and I remember articles that I wrote being picked up on by the national press. It doesn't usually happen to editors of the Eton College Chronicle. And I remember getting an inkling then, but I thought it would all die down. It just sort of snowballed rather than get more bearable. But there we are. I mean, I'm not complaining. It's just it's an element. Everyone has things in their life they have to accept, and that is something I've accepted.
After her divorce, it was reported that she asked you for a house here at Altrop, that she wanted some sort of bolt hole in the grounds, and you refused. And
Yes.
was that true?
I refused one particular house in the park on the basis that the press and the police attention would have been unsustainable. And at the time, I felt I was doing the right thing because I was protecting my children's privacy. I didn't want the press camped outside their door.
What do you feel now? Do you regret it, or do you still feel...
No, because I'd offered such a wide selection. But it was typical Diana, the fact I said no to one thing, she'd just say, right, well, I'm not going to look at the others, which is fine. But I mean, I did offer her a selection of 100 houses. It's just unfortunate she didn't like the one that... she didn't get the one she wanted.
I mean, could she be a bit of a prima donna? Was she a bit tricksy?
No, but I mean, there are very few people who said no, I think. That's the problem, and I did.
But it didn't cause a sort of lasting rift with her?
Oh, it caused a rift for a few months, yeah. But I was quite relaxed about it. I mean, I was ready... I mean, I knew the phone would go again one day and she'd be back to normal. It was fine, and that's what happened.
What, did she just come on one day and say?
Yeah, as though nothing had happened.
Really?
But that's fine. I mean, that was Diana. And actually, my mother made a very good point to me the other day. She said, you've got to understand, as family, we're about the only people she could really get her aggro off against without it becoming public. I mean, she could say whatever she wanted to me.
Freedom to behave badly.
Yeah, she could behave how she wanted with us, and we'd known her all her life. It was, it's just a safety valve, really. It's no big deal. I don't regret it. I made the right decision. I'd have loved to have accommodated her anywhere on the estate, but not in the park. I just couldn't do it.
Charles Spencer was only 27 when he inherited the £89 million estate. When his father, the 8th Earl, died, he was buried in the family crypt in the local church, and it was there, next to him, that Diana was also to be buried. But due to the scale of public mourning after her death and worries about security at the small country church, her brother was forced to make other plans.
Diana had left specific instruction that she should be buried in a coffin, not cremated. Now that meant that we had to keep the ventilation going in the crypt, and that obviously means that there's access to the crypt at some level. So I was very worried about the security implication. I was very worried about the impact on the local village.
We were getting about 1,000 visitors a day in the weeks after she had died. Had she been buried here, we would have had that number of visitors, I think, daily for ever and ever. And just a couple of days before the funeral, there was a woman in church here weeping at the gates to the chapel here. And she said to me, I'm coming back next week when she's buried here so that I can be with her. And that would have been the attitude of many, many people. They'd have been back here to be with the princess, as they put it.
The one thing that I was sure of, one thing I've been told by police, etc., is that there is going to be a stage where somebody tries to dig her up. Apparently it's a 100% record. Famous people attract unhinged people who try and dig them up. So I don't know, I woke up one morning and I went to see the two managers of the estate. I said, look, I've decided she's going to be buried in the park, and I think the island's the best place. And they both smiled and they said, well, we've come to the same conclusion. It's the only thing we can do.
My son certainly made the decision, but he asked all of us. And it really was just beautiful, because it's almost like it was made for what's happened to it. The lake itself was man-made about 100 years ago. So therefore the island is the only part of the land that's left. The water around it was made, the hole for the water to go in. And I think it's perfect.
Around the oval itself, there was a temple there already, and I thought it would be nice to dedicate that to Diana's memory. There's going to be a profile of Diana carved in marble in the middle, and then on either side there's going to be a quote from Diana about her keenness to help those less fortunate than herself, which seems entirely appropriate. An urn on the island, an urn, a traditional burial symbol, and I've put that at the other end of the island, and that's just to mark the fact that this island is a burial place, really, because I don't want to mark the grave on the island.
We'll build this blockwork core up and fill it with concrete to make a solid plinth to carry the stonework that's been designed to create the tympanum urn. It'll be clad in Portland stone, and the stonemasons will appear, and we'll crane the actual monument slabs over. It gets clad with slabs round to about so big, and then there's two blocks on top of that. We cut these branches out, and the urn will sit up, and the curved branch that comes over it will sit like an arch over it, the curved branch, so it sits in the centre. So when you come down the first path, That's what you see as you come down towards the island first time.
What's the plan now, Dick? If the crane doesn't work, what's going to happen?
Well, the bits of stone aren't too heavy. It's just they're very vulnerable and they've got sharp arises, and you can't afford to put any weight on the corners. I hope to crack it today. We're prepared to stay long and late. It might be the flambeau on top. The flame is the last item to go on in the dusk. The danger is that a wild gale may blow a branch, and if a branch hits an urn, then the narrow neck usually breaks and crumbles.
It's a good setting, isn't it?
So it's a lovely setting, it really is, because I didn't know it before, but
no,
just coming upon it as I did the other day, it's just so dignified.
The whole idea with the lake was to enhance the natural beauty rather than interfere with it, so that people who come in July and August can sit there and think, and there are some benches as well, but just the sheer number of people, they can sit and think and contemplate the island and see that it's a place of stunning beauty and something entirely suitable for Diana.
Can I ask you now about Diana's death? How did you hear about her accident?
I was in Cape Town, and my telephone went in the middle of the night, and I picked it up and it went dead, and then it went again, and it was one of the managers who runs the estate here, who lived in a house I used to live in here, and he said, "Oh, I've just had one of the Sunday papers on, and they've said that your sister and Dodie Fayed have been in a car crash in Paris, and that it's serious." So I got up out of bed and I went downstairs and turned on the television and flicked between CNN and BBC World, and both of them had independent witnesses at that stage who said they'd seen her walk away and that she'd probably broken her arm and had a gash in her thigh. So I thought, well, that's serious, but I stayed up watching for about an hour, and that seemed to be the consensus, that she was fine. And then the telephone went, and it was my sister Sarah, my eldest sister, and she said, "I'm afraid it is serious. We think it's brain damage." So I said, okay. And then I rang up my middle sister, Jane, whose husband works at Buckingham Palace, and I thought he might have a better picture of what was going on. And Jane said, "Oh, hang on, Robert's just on the other line to Paris." And then she stopped talking, and then I heard Robert go, "Oh, no." And I remember just sitting there in shock for several hours. And then my children came through, my 3 little girls, and I said, "I got some awful news. I'm afraid Aunt Diana's been killed." And the little middle twin of mine, she looked at me and she said, and she just smiled and she said, "But not in real life, Daddy." And then I thought, well, the only way I'm going to show it to them was to show them on television. I turned on the television, and there was the car being pulled out of the tunnel. And even then, that meant nothing to them, because you see, they watch things on television which are fiction, and they didn't really get it, you know. And then I flew back that night. And it was, while flying back, I was sitting on the plane, and I was in a bit of a state, and the air stewardess kept sort of bringing me handfuls of Kleenex and things. And then I started to try and deal with practicalities, and I thought, well, you know, we've got to have a funeral now, and somebody's got to speak, and somebody's got to read a lesson and all this. And I had my address book, and I went through it looking for somebody to make a speech about Diana. And there was just no one. I just went up page after page, and I thought, well, they can't do it, they can't do it. And I just sat there, and I suddenly had this ghastly realisation that it was going to have to be me.
How did you cope in the days leading up to the funeral? I suppose you were very busy.
There was a lot to do. I mean, it was still a family funeral, even though it obviously looked far from that. And I was liaising with a colonel at Buckingham Palace over the details and making sure that the right hymns were selected. All my family were helping, I might add. It wasn't just me.
Whose idea was it to walk behind the coffin?
That was, I think it was probably the Queen's or Prince Charles's idea. It's something I'll never, ever get over. It's totally traumatic, and having my two nephews next to me and not knowing how they were doing, trying to keep an eye on them, see they were okay. Two boys walking behind their mother's body in front of tens of millions of people. I mean, it's not something I would have chosen, really, but there we are. It was harrowing, really. I was walking down a tunnel of grief, and you could feel the intensity of that grief every footstep. And at the same time, you couldn't identify, you couldn't put a human face on the grief because you couldn't look left or right. I was looking straight down a gun barrel, and then every now and then just checking the boys were okay. And you'd walk 100 yards in complete silence, but with this grief bearing down on you. And then somebody would scream in almost in tortured pain. They'd bellow, which was just awful. And then other people would be sobbing. Others would applaud. And then the silence again. I mean, it just seemed endless to me.
Did it help at all having the princes there to help?
Yeah, it did in a way. I mean, I would have been in tears if they hadn't been there. And because they weren't, I mean, being a generation senior to them, I couldn't cry if they weren't. But it was horrendous. And I mean, my admiration for those two boys is without bound now. I mean, how they could have got through it. It's the most amazing display of courage that I'll ever see, I imagine.
I stand before you today, the representative of a family in grief, in a country in mourning, before a world in shock.
I'm always someone who's really guarded their privacy, and the thought of having to speak was a bit daunting. I didn't know what I was going to say at all. And then I woke up on the Wednesday morning between the death and the funeral at about 4:30 in the morning, and I just got up and I wrote it. And I'd finished it about an hour and a half later, and it stood. That's what I read out.
What did you feel like as you were about to step up there?
Well, just before I had to go up, I think it was the Prime Minister read a lesson, then Elton John performed. And actually, luckily, I'd heard him rehearse the day before, so I was prepared for how emotional it would be. And then I walked up there and started to speak. And I wasn't so sure, and I was just talking, and I tripped up over a word quite early on. And then it was almost like I totally relaxed then, because it was almost like a voice said, no, you've got something to say it. And that was it, just did it. And it was not a problem to deliver it. I didn't think about the audience and how many people were there or whatever, I just read it and did it. Towards the end it got very difficult. When I started to talk to William and Harry over their mother's coffin, I mean, phew, that was very, very upsetting. And I only just made it to the end of the speech. I think another paragraph and I would have been completely inaudible.
On behalf of your mother and sisters, I pledge that we, your blood family, will do all we can to continue the imaginative and loving way in which you are steering these two exceptional young men, so that their souls are not simply immersed by duty and tradition, but can sing openly as you planned. We fully respect the heritage into which they have both been born, and will always respect and encourage them in their royal role. But we, like you, recognize the need for them to experience as many different aspects of life as possible, to arm them spiritually and emotionally for the years ahead.
You talked about, you know, how you pledged that you, her blood family, would do everything you could to help William and Harry's souls to sing, I think you said, rather than being immersed in duty and tradition. Now, I mean, that's a hard blow to take when you're actually sitting there listening to that as Prince Charles was. I mean, the implication that he couldn't help their souls to sing.
Really, I was picking up on the magic of Diana. This was a tribute to Diana. It was a eulogy. I wasn't taking any swipes at anyone.
But you can't say immersed in duty and tradition without realising that that is loaded. I mean, you're a wordsmith. You understand what words mean, what their implications are.
Well, I don't back down from the words at all, but what I'm saying is that Diana brought to their lives something quite different and wonderful. And I was just offering in any way that her family, her surviving family, could help to perpetuate that. I was offering it to them.
And yet, by the time you stepped out that abbey, you were being hailed, on the one hand, as a national hero, and on the other as a catalyst that might bring down the monarchy.
Right, well, obviously I was unaware of that.
I mean, was it a complete shock to you what was made of that speech then?
I'm pleased that I said what I said for Diana, and judging by the letters I get from the public, I had 200,000 letters. People were in agreement that it needed to be said.
But you must have known that this was dynamite. Some of the things that you were saying, you must have known.
No, not at all.
Well, you must be naive then.
No, not naive. I just wrote what I felt to be honestly true. You know, I support the Queen enormously, but individual members of the royal family I don't actually know at all well, so it's... Although I respect their position and everything, I genuinely don't know them, so I can't have a strong opinion. The only two members of the royal family who I really know on a level of any significance are my nephews, and I'm certainly not going to sit here and criticise their relatives. The point is that they can be in no doubt that I am sincere in my wish to help them in any way they want. And, you know, they'll be at an age soon where they'll do their own thing and see whoever they want to see. And, you know, if they see me as some sort of interfering uncle they don't want to see, I'm sure they'll make it very clear.
How have they been this year? Are they okay?
Well, I mean, they're very special boys, as I said in my tribute. And I think they've done remarkably well. But beyond that, I mean, I think it would be betraying confidences to say anything else. But I think this country is extremely lucky to have them as two princes. They're fantastic boys. In fact, William's a man now, really.
There is no doubt that she was looking for a new direction in her life at this time. She talked endlessly of getting away from England, mainly because of the treatment that she received at the hands of the newspapers. I don't think she ever understood why her genuinely good intentions were sneered at by the media, why there appeared to be a permanent quest on their behalf to bring her down. It is baffling. My own and only explanation is that genuine goodness is threatening to those at the opposite end of the moral spectrum. It is a point to remember that of all the ironies about Diana, perhaps the greatest was this. A girl given the name of the ancient goddess of hunting was, in the end, the most hunted person of the modern age.
Your remarks about the press hounds who turned her into the most hunted person on earth. Are you still bitter about the way you feel they treated her?
Well, I don't know if bitter's the right word. I mean, it's just devastating when you're somebody's brother to see them being chewed up by anything. And it was my duty that day to point out this very significant factor in her life, which she had found incredibly hard to deal with. When I spoke about her tearful despair, I mean, that is what we were dealing with here. And just complete loss of hope. And I think that the press really did hurt her in her life, yeah, really hurt her. To an extent which you or I would find illogical, because we would have thought she could rise above it, but she did have this insecurity which made her very vulnerable to the press.
She learned to play the media game, though, didn't she? She was able to exploit the media for her own ends.
I think if you're faced with a sort of juggernaut like the media, you can either be squashed by it, or you can try and harness some of its power. And I think she harnessed it for the good of her causes, yes, and I think that's a good thing.
Elsewhere in the speech, you talked about your gratitude to God for taking Diana at her most beautiful and radiant, and when she had joy in her private life. Now, were you aware of the nature of her relationship with Dodi Fayed?
I think we all know what the early stages of a relationship are like. They're very heady and very exciting. And tragically for both of them, they never got beyond that heady stage. So speculation as to what might have happened or what might not have happened is completely ridiculous in my view.
Certainly none of my family are aware of any plans for them to have got married.
But did you perceive her to be happier at that stage of her life than she had been for a while?
Actually, I'd found her to be very happy in herself in March when she came to stay with me in Cape Town. And she wasn't seeing him then. I think she'd reached a mature stage of her life where she'd got certain things in perspective and knew who she was. And I think that she'd just sort of levelled out, which is quite normal in someone who's 35, 36, whatever.
Diana's lack of self-esteem, which, I mean, she talked about it herself quite a lot. I mean, what do you feel was the root of that?
I don't know. I don't know whether it was something she was born with or whether it was something that developed inside of her. But I think it's rather wonderful in a way that somebody who had so much still doubted themselves. I wouldn't see it necessarily just as a weakness. I think it's a fascinating part of her psychological makeup, really. This beautiful, funny, intelligent, spontaneous, giving woman wasn't sure about herself. And actually, we're all like that, aren't we? I mean, nobody's that confident about themselves. And I think it shows great courage that she could face up to that. I mean, everyone puts on their own mask in the world, and she wasn't prepared to sort of kid herself, really.
I've been here nearly 20 years now, and she was a long-legged schoolgirl when I first met her. She used to come here weekends with her friends and play tennis on the courts down there and use the pool for swimming as well. She was always a very lively person. I must say, she's always made you feel at ease, as I find that all the family do, tell you the truth. It's not when the boss is around, you duck and dive sort of thing. They always make you feel at ease and relaxed with them.
She told us to call her Diana. That was it, that spring of the year, just before she got engaged to Prince Charles. We were calling her Lady Diana, and she just said, "Oh, call me Diana," she said. And then we was briefed to call her Your Highness and then Ma'am. And I'm afraid I slipped up a couple of times and just called her Diana, but nobody heard, so I didn't get told off.
She's a lovely person, she was. Really was. Well, they all were, weren't they? Lady Jane, the same, weren't she? We worked in Lady Jane's house, and they're lovely people. And the later was a perfect gentleman. Perfect gentleman. He'd come stop in the old rolls, wouldn't he, Ted? If I was working beside the road on the outside, well, thank us for all we've done for him. Always.
The staff on this estate are extremely loyal to my family, and she really couldn't be in better hands. The crucifix above the temple next to where Diana's buried, the old carpenter who's retired came out of retirement because he wanted to do the crucifix on top of it for Diana. The forester, we were going to let some contractors come in and plant these trees, but then the head forester said, "No, I've been here 34 years, this is my job."
You're doing the traditional
Oh, yes.
way of doing it.
Yes, grandfather's touch.
I know, you wouldn't have allowed anything else, would you?
No, it's the truth.
Everyone here is so keen to look after her mortal remains that, I mean, really, she couldn't be in a place where she'd be better looked after.
That week after Diana's death, I mean, it was an extraordinary week, the depth and the passion of people's feelings, and it took everyone by surprise. What was that all about, do you think?
It's very hard. I've got a feeling that it was many things were going on at the same time. It was a reminder to everyone of their own mortality, because here was one person who really did seem to be indestructible, a beautiful princess in her early middle age, if that, being taken off the face of the planet by a car crash, something as mundane as a car crash. I think that gave everyone such a jolt. It was so out of the blue. And then a feeling that, in fact, she was getting her life together and how cruel it was. And then a realization, even among people who had previously been critical of her, that she actually had done such an enormous amount for the world, for charitable causes, for humanity and compassion, and that really it was so cruel that she was taken in such a sort of mundane way at such an early age. I think it really shook everyone. And also, I've had people tell me that they reacted more strongly to her death than to members of their own family's death. And I think seeing her image every day, probably, for the past 17 or 18 years, had made people think that she was part of their own life in a funny way. And to think that they'd never see her alive again was something that people found very difficult. But it also tapped into something spiritual, I think.
Something spiritual that we're lacking.
Something that people don't have in their everyday life because of it's in Britain because of formal religion falling away quite a lot. And it was something that went beyond the death of a human being to a sort of realization that spiritual things do matter in life, and that this woman who had done so much good for so many disadvantaged people had met a very cruel end. And I think it made people think very deeply about what they were doing in their own lives to help other people. And I walked around with my family the night before the funeral. We all had supper together, and then we wandered around Kensington Palace Gardens, and it was the most extraordinary experience, really. These people just sort of, a lot of them dumbstruck and trying to grasp what had really happened.
You've had quite a hammering in the press in the last few months. I mean, you descended from being this great hero to villain, virtually. Has that been difficult to cope with? I mean...
Well, I had one tabloid editor rang my mother during my divorce, which sadly I'm not allowed to talk about because I'm bound to confidentiality. But he rang during that time, and my mother was in tears at the unfair treatment that she perceived I was getting in the papers. And she said, "Why do you do this to my son?" And this tabloid editor said to her, "Because I'll never forgive him. When he made his speech, my mother cried with shame at my profession," his profession being tabloid journalism. So I'm not being forgiven for that. And then my mother said, "Well, what are you going to do to him next?" And he said, "Whatever his plans for the house opening, I don't care what they are, I'm going to rubbish them."
Part of the perception is that you are not above using the media when it suits you. And therefore you're a hypocrite because you lay into them at other times.
I don't go along with that. I mean, I have done a spread on the house, for instance, yes, which the money went to the maintenance of the house.
You're talking to me here today.
Oh, yes,
I mean, arguably,
you
you're exploiting it for your own ends.
I'm not really exploiting it. I'm taking the opportunity to put my side. I think it would be unreasonable to expect me to just take everything on the chin day after day. And really the point of me talking to you today is to give people an idea of really what is going on here, the ideas behind this exhibition to the memory of my sister. And it's a chance for you to put across some of the points that people might want to ask me, because I don't give interviews.
Here at Aldrup, I feel that it's been very harsh and very hurtful at times, because in response to literally hundreds of thousands of letters of people who have written, especially to my son, but to all of us, individually requesting that they could come and pay their last respects, My son and a huge team of people have spent enormous time and care in trying to look after those people coming here. Now, to come here is to be quiet, to pay your last respects. And the press have had limited information and judge rather mercilessly on some occasions. So I'm really happy that it's opening time now, because the judges are the people who wanted to come here. I mean, it's a strong exhibition in many ways, and it's powerful, but it's also very gentle. It's almost like she's had a hand in it.
I don't think it's canonising her at all, because it's showing a very human person. The things in the childhood room, anyone could identify with those. It's trying to show, really, far more than just being a princess from the age of 20, whatever she was. That this was a baby, and then a little girl, and then a young woman, and then that's what came onto the world stage. She wasn't just suddenly plucked from nowhere one day. And I think it is the context that we can provide here, which nobody else can. And also, as I say, the guarding the good taste of the whole thing. My one instruction to everyone involved in this whole project is that everything we do has to be beyond reproach. And by that I mean we have to have a clear conscience that at the end of the day we've done something of great significance, which is of benefit to a lot of people who want to come and pay their respects, and is in no way tacky, commercial or profiteering. Well, we've done it, and I'm very proud of the results as they are manifesting themselves. And of course there's criticism. There's always going to be criticism. There's always going to be people who want to denigrate me, and I'm sort of used to that. But at the end of the day, I know I've done the best I can, and I'm sure the public will make their own feelings known once they've seen it.
However tastefully you do it, you're going to create a tourist attraction. You're creating a sort of tasteful Graceland.
I'm not creating a tourist attraction. The tourists were going to come anyway if we'd done nothing. What I've done is limit the number of tourists who can come. I mean, certainly if I was interested in making money or whatever, I don't think I'd be a very good businessman if I just stuck to 60 days out of 365 as being open.
But you're making it hugely more attractive by making such a beautiful exhibition. I mean, it's extraordinarily moving.
But it doesn't matter how much more attractive I'm making it, because it's still the same number of people who are coming in. There's 2,500 people a day for 60 days, because we know we can cope with that in a dignified manner.
See, people say he's a shrewd businessman. He must have done his sums. He must know that this is going to set Altrop up for the future.
Well, it's not. On the figures I've got, we're going to make quite a big loss this first year. But I don't mind that. We're still going to give a donation to the Memorial Fund.
How much?
Well, we're going to put a minimum of 10% of the ticket sale will go there this year. Well, there's no profit to cover that. That's coming straight out of my pocket, I assume. We hope that we'll be making a profit for the Memorial Fund in the second year and the third year onwards. But I mean, I'm producing audited accounts at the end of this year to show exactly how much has been spent, where it's gone, and, you know, this is for public consumption. I think people have lost track of this. I mean, can you imagine anybody making a profit out of their brother or sister's death? It's so low, it's inconceivable. I don't know anyone who would. But because the press can present Diana as a public figure, rather than as my sister, they can make it sort of a possible accusation. Whereas, of course, it's completely out of the question. I will never profit from Diana's death.
What about the concert? Was that not a bit of a tacky idea, especially so close to her grave?
Well, it's not that close to her grave. I mean, this park is the size of Monaco, so the point is that you can have something in the park and it's not actually sort of tripping over something else. I think the idea of a concert's entirely suitable. Diana loved her music. And, I mean, every penny is going to go to the Memorial Fund, and I think it's entirely suitable, actually.
Let me ask you about the Diana Memorial Fund. What are your main objections to what's happening there?
There's been no huge rift, but I wrote on behalf of my mother and my sister Jane, and the three of us were concerned that the fund should remember that its prime objective is to take in the money that people have given or raised for it, and then to give it out. The problem that we three had was the fund, and therefore Diana's name, being tied up with anything that was overly commercial. And I think that it probably was a mistake to put her name on margarine tubs and scratch cards. I mean,
And do you think there should be a date at which it will be terminated?
Yes. I don't even want to say when, but...
And what then happens to your profits from here, if you've got no fund?
Oh, well, I give them to other charities, or even the same charities, but not via the fund.
There were reports at the time that Prince William shared your unease. Was that true?
Well, it's a difficult... I really wouldn't want to betray William's confidence, but I think I can say that he wasn't entirely unsupportive.
Since Diana's death, there's been a wave of conspiracy theories. Are you in any doubt in your own mind that it was anything but an accident?
Yeah, I'm not a believer in the conspiracy theories. And I think they're particularly unfortunate in that it just drags everything over and over again for the boys, more than anyone. I mean, it's desperate for them. I mean, it's not much fun for the rest of my family either. But I know everyone always wants a different angle on this or that, and people are sure this must have happened or that didn't happen. Well, I've seen absolutely no evidence that there's any sort of conspiracy. And I'd have thought that conspiring to kill people in a very solid car in a tunnel, I mean, no, it just doesn't make sense to me at all. There'd be easier ways to do it if you were going to do it. And I've seen absolutely no evidence that it was anything other than an accident.
What about the claims that she uttered some last words before she died?
There are no last words. There's absolutely no possibility of there having been last words. The injuries she received were such that it was just impossible for her to have uttered anything. And the French doctors are adamant on that. And my family and I believe them when they say that.
It's difficult, though, when people make these claims.
It's very upsetting that people have tried to suggest otherwise. Because, again, it's so... I mean, it's baffling. Why would anyone want to do that, really? I mean, pretend somebody said something when they're supposedly dying. I mean, it's monstrous, really, isn't it?
But tell me, there's nearly a year after her death, she continues to exert this amazing hold on the public imagination. But there are already beginnings to be signs of a backlash, people saying they're fed up seeing her picture still in the newspapers, academics coming out and saying she's a symbol of a self-indulgent and muddled Britain. Are you concerned at that? Are you concerned about how history in the end will see Diana?
I don't think anything that anyone says or does now is going to alter the impact she had. And the overwhelming impact was a positive one. When she died, she would have had no idea how universal the impact of her death would be. It's an extraordinary thing that she probably didn't. She had no concept of how popular she was or what she meant to people. Although every day that she went to one of her engagements, or every time she opened her mailbag, she would have been told about what people really felt about her. And it's interesting, the amount of letters I've had from members of the public who've said, I wish when she was alive I'd told her what I really thought of her, but I never got round to it. And it's very sad, that, you know.
I wonder, though, is it not hard when you're grieving genuinely for someone you love to find that your grief has been appropriated by millions of people who didn't know her? I mean, did you never feel like saying, try feeling what I'm feeling, what her sons are feeling?
Well, actually, no, I didn't resent it. I didn't resent people joining in the grief because it was genuine, you see. They genuinely felt they'd lost someone. And that is only flattering to Diana's memory, and it's a good thing. I think what was, in fact, helpful was feeling other people's grief through these letters, because it is like lancing a boil in a way. I mean, you can bottle up, especially when you're busy organising things and trying to be efficient, to be able to read other people's appreciation of someone. I found this when my father died too, and lots of people wrote. It helps you get it out of your system, and it just pulls away all the stiff upper lip rubbish, and you can actually get down to raw emotion. So in a way I was very grateful. And also there's the other side. It's not like someone's going to come up to me and say, "How's your sister?" I mean, they all know. I mean, say I was an ordinary brother who'd lost a sister. There's none of this sort of awkwardness about, "Oh, we can't mention that," because almost anyone who's been bereaved knows it's better for people to talk about it than to avoid the subject. And because Diana's death is such a public issue, people are so open about it, and that's very helpful, because they feel it's their loss too.
I think that far too little's been said about what people all over the world gave to her. They nourished her. They made her smile. They gave us strength to go into the areas of which she went, of disabled, diseased, deprived people. But really the public worldwide were her strength.
I think people identified Diana as someone very human. She was in an extraordinary position, whether you see it socially or culturally, and yet she did a lot of good with her position. And I think her appeal was, yes, her beauty. I don't think the magic would have worked so well if she was plain. But it was this incredible story of a beautiful princess who actually got involved in nitty-gritty issues and was prepared to be human and wasn't aloof and got stuck in. And I think people were intrigued by this phenomenon, which she was. We're not trying to make it a morbid experience. We don't want people to come here and just be miserable. We've got to remember the whole Diana, not just the sad end. There is a certain duty to allow the public to come and pay their respects. I mean, I get a lot of letters every day from people thanking me and my family for allowing them to come, and they're saying just it's wonderful that they're able to do it, and it does mean a lot to them, you see. I've kept William and Harry informed of pretty much everything that's been going on here, through letters, really, just telling them everything, and they're entirely supportive of everything. I mean, they realise that this is the way it should be done.
Are you in a position yet where you can see anything good at all, having come out of Diana's death?
My mother and two other sisters and me have seen an awful lot of each other over the past few months, and that's been a very positive thing. And I think that death in a family really makes you rethink what's important in life. And
has it changed you?
Well, I think I'm much more relaxed now. I used to really mind about things the whole time, and I've got a much more balanced view of life, I think. I find it very difficult talking about Diana sometimes, and I find that the smallest thing will set me off crying or whatever. But overall, it's probably made me a more thoughtful person, I think.
And you miss her?
Yeah, very much. I mean, that laugh. I was watching one of the videotapes we're showing in the museum with someone, and there's this long shot in slow motion of her laughing and laughing in a boat with the boys at an amusement park. And although it's silent, I could really hear the laugh, and it was such an intrinsic part of her. It really was a joyous laugh, and of course I'll never hear that again.